All right, looks like we're live, YouTube. Good morning. How's everybody doing? Get our weather snapshot in and we'll move on here shortly. But looks like we're getting our good amount of summer storms out there. We were talking about Missouri needing water last week. It looks like they're getting it right on cue there, right in the middle. Some pretty significant storms, it looks like, with the yellow and red stuff there. So that's tornado warning potential maybe there in Kansas and whatnot, Nebraska. So how's everybody doing this morning? We are looking at a bright and sunny day here. It was about 105 yesterday, I guess, or maybe not quite that hot, but it felt like 105. Dry heat, though. Expecting more of the same today here. I'm sure over in the valleys of California, they got to be getting above 110. Got a Phil Furseller out over there. His struggles. Keeping the animals sane is the hard part. But what we got M Long checking in with us. How's it going this morning? 81 sounds nice and comfortable until you add on that 90% humidity. But we'll be good. So I'll move on from the weather quickly. If you're in Alberta up there, looks like they're getting quite a bit of rain. Up in Canada, big cell of storms, it looks like. But moving on quickly here, looking at the economic side, CNBC housing starts are down. So we're looking at kind of that slowdown effect of a lot of different things, potentially the interest rate market, the ability of people to get money on loans probably affects some of this. But also just people are done buying new houses. But down 12%, 9-month low on permits for the third straight month. So I think you would say this is expected. You can only build so many houses before people would rather get into old construction or something before they buy a new house. But 12.3% to a seasonally adjusted annual rate of 1.173 million units last month. That's still a lot of houses. So we're still looking at 1.173 million houses for the year as an annual yearly build rate. 1,173,000 houses being built. I mean, that's a lot of housing. It's, I guess, to house all the illegal immigrants that come across, because our population rate's not changing much otherwise with the birth rate and whatnot. But that's the biggest drop since November 2016, which is a winter probably adjustment as well in that data. But having that big a drop in summer is probably concerning some people. Single-family home building, which accounts for the largest share of the housing market, decreased 9.1% to a rate of 858,000 units last month. So single-family homes versus, you figure apartment buildings are included, double, what do you call them, duplexes, all that other stuff. But standalone single-family homes decreased 9.1%. Builders are continuing to be burdened by the rising construction material costs, which we know the tariff issue is going to hinder this. As it says, the administration imposed an anti-subsidy duty on imports of Canadian softwood lumber in April of 2017, which builders say have boosted the price of new single-family homes. So prices versus demand. There's a kind of in a graph going back over the year where we're at. So just some information economically, if you're in the housing market or know people that are, how that might affect them. Housing prices might slow down a little bit. Might be a little bit of inventory be boosted. Hey, Barry Wood, good morning. Lots of smoke in the air in your area. Yeah, we're getting a little bit in our area. We got a little bit of the Yellowstone or Yosemite fire here. And I think there's another fire too further north, but coming across the Sierra, getting to us. And we're dealing with a little bit of that. It's not nothing. They haven't put any like air quality warnings out. I think they have them in Reno though. I think Reno's getting more smoke than we are down here. But we deal with that. And Walter Davis, good morning. All right, so moving on from that, there was a good graphic that came out. Somebody did a study and a graphic on United States arms exportation. It was a good visualization. I saw it on the Twitter originally. It looks like this is out of well, they're talking about some other things up here first, but there's this graphic that links over. It's on Vimeo, but it shows the history going back to this, what year did it start in the 50s? And just shows the amount of, just watching this graphic expand as you go through it is just almost sad. It's like the Canadians get, I guess we give Canada all the weapons they want. That seems to continue. But you can see the shift from the Cold War as it goes forward. Like this is in the 60s right now, and it moves forward into the Middle East and some in Africa as you get into the 80s and whatnot. You see Central America, and it's just an amazing graph. You'd have to see this on your screen. I don't think it's going to come through very well for you guys here, but you're looking at it like it's a long time to be shipping a lot of guns. And it shows a little graph in the corner about the top 10 recipients. Like here in the top 10 in 1970s and 1979, that's still the recipient that was on top was Iran. In 80, it switches to Japan. Like that quick, as soon as the Ayatollah take over, like little things like that trigger things in history that to look at. It's pretty interesting. Like here, the Netherlands is like number 6. Like who knew we sent so many arms to the Netherlands? '90s back to Japan being number 1. Like rearming of Japan's military in that time frame. And down at the bottom, United Kingdom and Germany were in the top 10 in the late 90s. Who knew? So not only were we pretty much defending them, we were giving them all the weapons they wanted. And here in the 2000s, South Korea jumps to the top. So it is real interesting on graphic here. Let's see what Zero Hedge has to say about it, though. This is about the weapons sales policy from back in April, loosening export rules on equipment ranging from fighter jets and drones to warships and artillery. The official said. Some more details on the weapons sales policy. Reuters has learned that the initiative will provide guidelines that could allow more countries to be granted faster deal approvals, possibly trimming back to months what it often takes years to finalize. The strategy would call for members of Trump's cabinet to sometimes act as closers to seal major arms deals. More top government officials will also be sent to promote U.S. weapons at international air shows and arms bazaars. So you get in that lucrative market of selling weapons straight out of the White House. That's what you call a bold move, Cotton. So again, off the Reuters, the Trump administration stresses that the main arms are to help American defense firms compete better against increasingly aggressive Russian and Chinese manufacturers and give greater weight than before to economic benefits of arms sales to create more jobs at home. So I guess American people aren't buying enough weapons, so let's make sure we're getting them all overseas. If you started selling Stinger missiles and M1 Abrams and everything to the American public, we'd snatch them up probably faster than any foreign government. You'd be surprised. Do we get bulk to discounts? So I was more interested in that graph than the president's policy, but that's interesting to put the importance on weapons dealings. Biggest defense contractors graph: Lee, Lockheed, Boeing, Raytheon, General Dynamics, Northrop Grumman, United Technologies Corporations, L3 Communications, BAE Systems, Humana. There's an odd name for a defense contractor, and Huntington Ingalls Industries. So there's, but check out that graph that's in here in particular. It's shows all the weapons transfers for the last 70 years. That's really interesting how that flows from country to country in a historical standpoint. Hey, Scotsman, what's up? Good morning. Just joined us. Walter, we all want a Stinger missile, right? If we could probably something down that what can I use to take out drones of the annoying people in the neighborhood, that would be useful. Maybe something a little bit smaller than a Stinger, but capable of taking down a drone. Hey, good morning, Alicia. I was just getting ready to talk about you. You popped in just in time. Real quick, checking in on our favorite collapsing country. Really the only story out there on the Venezuelan situation. This is Reuters. Worry Venezuelans rely on dog cart transporters as buses succumb to crisis. They running out of fuel, I assumed when I clicked on it. That's what I was thinking, that oil-rich country like Venezuela is running out of gas. But we'll see what they say here. In this once thriving industrial city as much as the country, public buses have gradually disappeared due to scarce or prohibitively expensive tires, motor oil, batteries, and spare parts. Pretty much everything that goes into making a vehicle is cost prohibitive now. Cargo trucks of all shapes and sizes have taken their place, but lack even basic safety protections for human cargo and are increasingly associated with accidents. So because public buses can't run because they're too expensive, private trucks are taking people around, like shown in the top graph, flatbed trucks and whatnot. But they're lamenting the safety devices are missing and proper seating and whatnot. So these are known as dog carts. So we weren't envisioning dogs pulling carts, or we were envisioning, but that's not what they're talking about. These are called dog carts, these improvised cargo trucks hauling people around instead of buses. So they're lamenting the plight of the poor people and having to take these around town in this seemingly human interest story. Where the biggest issue is that Venezuela has tons of oil, but yet can't afford the tires and oil that go with the vehicles they need to run their buses and other things. So these cargo trucks are now nearly as common as passenger buses in Venezuela, where transport union leaders say a fleet that 2 years ago was estimated at 280,000 vehicles has been whittled to just over 30,000. How big is Venezuela? 15 million people? Something like that? Was it bigger than that? It was probably bigger than that, but that seems like a lot of buses. 280,000 vehicles as part of transport system for a country like Venezuela. That seems high. Down to just 30,000 now, which almost sounds more realistic. Like that's the market correction for you. That's what the market corrected to, the need. Yeah, it's a country of 30 million. 30 million people. It's not a whole lot. That's what, Southern California? I don't think there's 280,000 buses in Southern California. Annual inflation estimated at 46,000% in June. So these torturous conditions, 39 people have died and around 275 have been injured in accidents involving unlicensed modes of public transport. These trucks are often targeted by criminals. I was talking about some anecdotal stories of riders being robbed, which would never happen on a government-run bus, I'm sure. It's kind of the implication they're putting here. Just because you're on this flatbed truck, you're getting robbed more than you would on a public transport. But people are being ingenuitive. If they have a truck, they're putting it to work, transporting people. So it's a win-win. People need cash. So if they have a truck, they use it. People need a ride, so they pay cash for a ride. Getting the government transport system out of the way. Interesting. Moving on. They ate all the dogs in Venezuela, they did, Walter? Did you see a report on that, or? Oh, I didn't consider that, Walter, that the hippie vans included the buses in SoCal. That wasn't a consideration. But moving on to our favorite subject around here, the South African land grab situation has been escalated by a local tribe, better known as what most people would consider the Bushmen. But it's what's called the Kasan Nation, I think is how you say it. There's a couple of videos attached below. Alicia Clegg did a video on this yesterday, beating me to the punch. That's all right. But there's a video in the links below of a gentleman in South Africa. He's speaking Dutch, I believe. He does a video here on it. It's all subtitled. Unless you speak Dutch, I don't think we're going to get much out of it. But go check that out. He talks about the situation. And Alicia did a good job on her video linking it up. That's in the description box below as well. But basically, this Bush People Nation has declared secession from the parliament. It's given them until Friday to vacate the premises. So this was handed down Monday, something like that. But Cape Town has seceded from the rest of South Africa. At least that's what the Khoisan Nation's king, I hope I'm saying that right, Kobela Calvin Cornelius III. And this is out of a South African paper. So they're probably going to downplay this a little bit. The traditional leader, again, traditional leader, so they're acknowledging that he has a traditional role in this, has given Parliament until Friday to vacate. It's an act of defiance of sovereignty and many say lunacy. But on Monday morning, Kasan Nation proclaimed the Cape of Good Hope an independent homeland. In an act of great symbolic significance, the sovereign state of Good Hope removed the South African national flag and hoisted their own. pretty straightforward. I like where this is going. This is like South Carolina all over again. The coup d'etat, the cultural political revolution, or this cultural political revolution went largely unnoticed. So this is all going on under the radar of the other land issues. But he does mention the land grab and the white genocide in his video. This chieftain, the chief here, king of the nation. He does mention that as a causation of this and how the government is trying to justify these things and for the protection of his own people and the unjust rulers of South Africa. He's seceding. In fact, most South Africans who have only recently woken up to the Khoisan Nation movement and Western Cape overthrow have wondered if it's an elaborate joke. But I'm going to screw this up how many times? Kobela seems quite serious about the secession, the Good Hope's newfound sovereignty being the result of legitimate and lawful process of secession by the traditional hereditary tribal leader of the Khoisan Nation, King Kobaha, Calvin Cornelius. Calvin Cornelius is easy. That's the third. The sovereign state of Good Hope. So he released an official statement in the nation. They have the link to his video below. He speaks in English, so we can listen to his statement, his full statement as reported in South African news, not just on YouTube. So it looks like they're an official government building serving papers or whatever you want to call. This is an 11-minute long video. I'm going to fast forward it a little bit. So they've got official documents they're looking through here that they're, I guess, basically serving the notice to the South African government. These are the notices they're putting on government buildings to get out, basically. There they replace the flag.
In Calvin Cornelius III, head of the Royal House of the Khoisan Nation. On the 24th September 2017, I seceded away from South Africa. Our geographical area consists of the Northern Cape, Western Cape, and the Eastern Cape up to the Fish River, the gateway to Africa. Preceding this secession, the following events happened that gave justification to the process within the prescribed international and national law after exhausting all avenues to get recognition. I was sworn in as the king of my nation in 2001 at the last crowning van Artendal. In the same year, I got custodianship of all Khoisan land endorsed by the Chief Magistrate, Johan Vetter, as referred to by the Chief Justice, John Schlopper. In 2007, 144 states in the General Assembly of the United Nations adopted the Declaration for the Rights of Indigenous People. South Africa was one of the 144 countries that signed this declaration. Yet, we are still being marginalized by the government of South Africa, where corruption is at the order of the day. This stops today. Today, the final phase of the succession was completed. I handed in an eviction notice to the government of South Africa and raised the flag of the sovereign state of Good Hope. We have always been the custodians of the land, as we were here before anyone else arrived on our shores. We lived in harmony and roamed our plains as we were a nomadic nation. We were one with the land and had no title deeds to lay claim to land, as we were part of the land. The land and us are one. Colonialists arrived and imposed on us their laws, and we, not being schooled in their ways, bartered and engaged them in our harmonious fashion, but were deceived as we became prey to their greed and found ourselves to be enslaved by them, even being hunted like animals. We fought, but our primitive weapons were inferior to their modern weapons at the time. Subsequently, as time passed, our territory became smaller as the settlers grew in numbers. As time went by, we were fading into non-existence by legislation, not of our own. Our forgiving nature prevailed, as we were not Christian beings, but spiritual beings. Hence, Christianity came easily because it was an extension of our own spirituality, as we were one with the Almighty. Centuries later, we found ourselves under the yoke of apartheid and still marginalized as a nation. We were being held down yet again by legislation and an inferior education system. Hence, during the 1970s, an awakening took place amongst us, whereby we fought for equal education. We also paid the ultimate price for freedom, but were under the boot of the regime at the time. However, the world started to take note of our plight. The majority of us stood our ground inside this country and did not go to neighboring countries in our thousands to fight for the liberation of our country. Today, we don't even get the recognition of the fight we fought. And the country was finally liberated in 1994. The dawn of a new era of hope and a dignified way of living was envisaged. 24 years after our liberation, we are still marginalized as a nation. 3 months after my declaration of secession, talks of land expropriation without compensation became the new buzzword. A new slogan, Uhuru, why genocide, became a focal point. Our country is moving in a downward spiral from which there will be no return. We are still one of the minority groups in this country. I ask myself, what if Uhuru is implemented? Where does that leave us as a nation? What is preventing the powers that be from engaging in xenophobic attacks on us after Uhuru has been completed, like they did to their own brothers? This government did us no favors at all since they came into power. Hence, I decided to sign an undertaking of unity with 4 groups of the population: Khoi, Khalid, Afrikaner, Boerevolk, and the Eurokaner. In the sovereign state of Good Hope, there is hope for all that is prepared to sign the oath of allegiance. Various freedoms and rights will be prevalent. Right to universal dignity and respect. Freedom of speech and expression. Freedom of conscience and belief. Freedom from want and freedom from fear. Opportunity freedom, capability freedom. The right to self-determination will be exercised by the 4 groups of the population I signed the undertaking of unity with. The unification of my people is paramount at this stage. Being spiritual, it is important for us to be forgiving. Nothing can be done about our past, but our future can be groomed from the mistakes we have learned from our past. My father always said that the fool learns from his own mistakes, whilst a wise man learns from others' mistakes. Last time I checked, we are not fools. We need to move forward without color glasses and see people for who they really are. Here's an opportunity for us to be a role model to the world and our children, showing that harmony can exist amongst people irrespective of their past. The sovereign state of Good Hope is a country of second chances. Some of the leaders in our communities are confusing our people, even to the extent that they show open support to the Zulu kingdom that in turn should favor them where needed. Now that the Ingonyama Trust is safe, as stated by President Ramaphosa, what are you going to do now? Humble pie tastes bad on dry toast. I have been silent and took your verbal abuse for too long. Align yourself to a legal cessation and be part of history and as stated previously, the sovereign state of Good Hope is a place for second chances. From today onward, we are free. The government has 5 days to remove themselves from our borders, as indicated in the eviction notice. In closing, here with a quote by President Abraham Lincoln: "You cannot help the poor by destroying the rich. You cannot strengthen the weak by weakening the strong. You cannot bring about prosperity by discouraging thrift. You cannot lift the wage earner up by pulling the wage payer down. You cannot further the brotherhood of man by inciting class hatred. You cannot build character and courage by taking away people's initiative and independence. You cannot help people permanently by doing for them what they could and should do for themselves. My hands are extended, reaching out to you. What you do with this opportunity presented to you is entirely up to you. I wish you God's grace and peace until we will hear from you again. Khamaku."
All right, so that was pretty interesting. He covered a lot of history in that as well, which was good to get that catch up to see their perspective. But in particular, you notice he mentioned 4 minority groups that he was uniting under this flag to basically resist the government, because they're concerned that is once the government's killed all the white people, they're going to come after us, which he seems pretty confident, especially when he's talking about their connection to the land and how they see the land. I would, very much like a nomadic people do. Exactly, Alicia. What's going to stop the government killing his people? Yeah, not much. Tony's with us. Good morning, Tony. What's up? This is a secession of the state of Cape Town, or what they're calling the sovereign state of Good Hope in South Africa, based upon the government's misdeeds and looking at land grabs and killing people based upon their color and history. So he covered a lot of that and the position of his people in that. And so that was interesting that he came into his leadership role as king in 2001. So this has been a long process that's been ongoing, and they dropped the eviction notice on Monday. It looked like that was some pretty good visuals. You saw a decent crowd in front of the different buildings raising the flag at the South African government buildings there in that state. So as it states here, this letter is to draw your attention to the fact that you have been duly noted of our secession and Declaration of Independence, and since you have not seen fit to reply, it is an established principle of international law that your non-response may well imply that you not only have been notified, but that you have agreed to the terms of our terms of secession. Silence is consent, right? That's the rule. Silence is consent. So this is good. This article is linked below. It has a lot of quotes out of the letter of secession and the eviction notices. This is good stuff. I'm a fan. I like this guy already. I liked how he had that ceremonial. I'm not sure what that weapon's called he was holding, but that's, a traditional weapon like that as a ceremonial piece. He kind of talked of peace, but was holding that at the same time. which kind of implies the willingness, but not going forward with that, not going to talk of that. So he's based the secession on the fundamentals of international law, which include principle of self-determination and the recognized principles that a state may qualify for international recognition when it meets the criteria of a permanent population, defined territory, and organized level of governance, and the capacity to manage its foreign relations. This letter notifies you that we are now asserting the territorial integrity, sovereignty, and independence of the sovereign state of Good Hope. I thought that was interesting. That I like how he talked about how his people, that they were one with the land, and they didn't really understand Western definitions of land ownership and stuff, much like the natives in America have had the same issue. And he brings that up as now that they're up to speed on this process, they are defining their land and seceding appropriately, also based upon the misdeeds of the government. Talking about their foreign relations with the Republic of South Africa are meant to be peaceful and constructive, and that we will work with you and collaborate with you in all ways that will advance the policies, purposes, and principles of the United Nations Charter. We expect that you will respect the Charter as well, and you'll respect the foundations of peace and common understanding and goodwill and fellowship between nation states and the explicit principles upon which the international system is found. I'm not sure how that'll go over. So the paper goes on to summarize, this act of defiance may only serve as a symbolic reminder. It may well be the intention of splinter groups within the Khoisan community, but only serves to highlight the marginalization experienced by South Africa's First Nation, what they also call the Bush people, apparently. Nationalism has grown in recent years after being denied the right of recognition of being the nation's first indigenous people. The secession move comes in the wake of fierce debate around land, belonging, and entitlement, with planned constitutional amendments aimed at land expropriation without compensation. That was one of his big things. And remember also he talked about bringing in 3 other groups outside the Khoisan nation, which included the Afrikaans and some other 2 other, I think he said, I forgot what he said now, but he mentioned 4 other nations to ally together in this nation state. So that's good. That's all in your links below. Hey, El Chavez, good morning. How's it going? No, El Chavez, this is separate. This is actually a native people in Africa seceding from the South African government, and they're accepting all people in their area. They're fighting back against the South African land grab, essentially. Because like he said in this statement, you'll see if you go to the links below, he just had about an 8-minute speech talking about this, and their concern is that once the government kills all the white people, they're going to come after the native people too. Some of the original natives down there and these smaller marginalized tribes and whatnot. To kind of give you a quick summary, it's not what you're talking. Yeah, it's kind of it's kind of a pushback against the government. So there's that. There's this video also of this is subtitled out of Dutch, analysis of the situation. So check those out. And Alicia Clegg's video she did yesterday on the situation as well. So I'm going to wrap it up. I got to go after that. It's been a long chat, but thanks for checking in. We'll see how this plays out, because they seem to be pretty serious with the raising the flag and serving an eviction notice, and a king that's been in place now for 17 years. He talked about the denial of recognition for 24 years since South Africa was reorganized after apartheid, and being denied their rights. So they've definitely, like he said, brought themselves up to speed on some of the principles of what we would call Western law, or Western principles and nationalism, I guess, which could harm them. But also, if you got to kind of play the game to win the game, right? All right, everybody. Again, thanks for joining us. Live free.